Right, let's get started. Hello everyone. My name is Andrew Katz. I am the chair of the Open Chain Education Workgroup, and welcome to this special briefing on the capability model that the Education Workgroup has been working on for the past few months. So, as ever, with Linux Foundation events and presentations. I will go through the antitrust policy notice, so please take a look at this and consider it carefully. If you feel that you're unable to participate in this meeting on this basis, then please can you remove yourself now. If you have any questions and you're a member of the Linux Foundation, then you can always get in touch with Andy Updegrove at Gesmer Updegrove. Otherwise, please refer any questions that you may have to your internal legal counsel. Right, okay, let's get on to the meat of this presentation. So the capability model is something that we've been working on for over a year now, and there's various iterations of it. And what we want to present to you today is a condensed version, which we've already started to sort of make use of it in client engagements. But if I can hand over to my colleague Stephen Pollard, then he can explain a little bit more about what a capability model is, what the use case is, and the development process that we've been undertaking to create it. And then I'll be taking you through the current work in progress of the capability model as it currently stands. So, Stephen, if I may, over to you, please.
Thanks very much, Andrew. Also a shout out to Sasha and David from Deloitte, who've been doing a lot of work on this model here, as well as Martin and others who've been really helping contribute to this. So what we're going to be able to show you today is, as Andrew says, as a result of a year's discussion and development around capability models, and the decision that the Education Workgroup took a while back to develop something which was a sort of a baseline set or a baseline view of capabilities that organizations who are open chain compliant, but a view of the capabilities that they would need to have in place to be able to be described as working at good or best practice in this area. So the definition of a capability model is a framework that really allows you to take a consistent snapshot across your own business over a number of different moments in time, or to take a snapshot across a number of different businesses and share experience. And that framework allows you to sort of take a snapshot, I guess, this definition of what does it mean to be good at the management of open source technology, and in particular compliance in relation to the 5230 standard. And the aim being to share best practice to be able to get to a place of continually optimizing your operation and making sure you're fit and able to cope with all the different changes that of course come through all of our organizations at many different points in time. So the model gives you a structured view and ability to make that take that picture to enable comparisons and also to sort of share experience with others. So we had some very interesting conversations with people over the year, and why a capability model might be interesting or useful for people. And there's very much a feel out there that it'd be handy to have something. A lot of organizations have already got to compliance, which is a self-registration declaration, and they also may have external parties giving assurance around that compliance case. But quite often organizations will need to think a bit more about, okay, well, we've achieved compliance, but where are our risks, and where do we want to be really good, not just compliant? Where do we want to move beyond compliance because we're dealing with very particular technologies, or we're dealing with very particular markets? Want to think about and make sure we are actively managing and improving as we go. And another use case, if you like, for a capability model is sometimes an OSPO or the open source program team will need to make a business case for improving or maybe in introducing some change into different teams or products. And it can be quite handy to have an external reference point to say, okay, well, look, this is information we've garnered from other organizations, and this is what good practice looks like, and this is where we are. So again, having something which is an external reference point can really help you build a business case. Also, some of the examples we've seen with capability models, there may be a very significant business milestone or a business outcome coming up. There could be a major customer contract being in place, and there may be a need to put warranties and indemnities in place. And a baseline model would allow you to take a sort of snapshot across all of your capabilities and say, and give evidence to your customer or give yourselves confidence that you have things in place that will cover the customer's requirements. Or even if you're a startup with a funding round coming around the corner, this kind of thing would give you a good sense of how you're doing and where you might want to improve. And we've also had a lot of interest in this in the area of mergers and acquisitions. I think the other examples there, you could see the key. I think I sort of mentioned the idea that if you look at the middle there, raising performance in different teams and units, you may well have a large and complex operation, and you may find that some teams are adopting processes in one way, and some teams are adopting processes in another way. Again, having an externally referenced sort of benchmark allows you to have a conversation which can sort of move beyond, well, we just want you to do it, which is sort of more pointing out, well, here's what other people are doing, and here may be some examples of how you might want to improve and change. And then those last two on the right hand side, there's a lot as you get into all the different capabilities inside inside open source management, and all the different processes and activities that need to be put in place. And sometimes you may need to sort of just take a step back and go, okay, well, where do we need to focus next? Where do we actually want to, really perhaps elevate some area of practice to a really high standard, because we feel that's a really key area for us, and we want to move on and not just be compliant, but we want to be truly excellent in a particular area. And well, what would our investment actually need to look like if we wanted to really raise our game? And the capability model gives you a way to break that down and to look at areas rather than it just being all of the possible activities. It would give you a sense of where you might need to go. And then, of course, this question of how to handle new and emerging risks, things like the governance and oversight management of AI is something that we're all looking at and all implementing early adoption of emerging standards and practices. Well, a capability model will give you a sense of a heat map, if you like, of the way in which a particular topic or theme, such as the governance of AI models, that would give you a bit of a heat map as to, okay, this is the way in which this particular question touches on our existing capabilities, and these would be different ways in looking at how you might want to improve. So these are all the different kind of use cases, and I'm sure there are more, and we're very interested in hearing from people as to ways in which they think they might want to use a capability model. There's a lot of discussion at the moment, for example, around the culture change or the right kind of culture that's needed to focus on open source management. And again, a capability model is something that could be used to put into tangible form the kind of things that do touch on culture and the way in which you might want to think about changing or improving the culture around open source management. So, as I say, we're very keen to hear from people. This being the education work group, the idea of sharing this learning is to give people a rapid way of catching up on best practice elsewhere, and also a rapid way of understanding and learning about the way in which to implement and manage OpenChain, and of course a rapid way to share best practice and to de-risk or improve your operation. So that being the idea behind the education work group, that's why we're sharing this work. So there has been quite a lot of work, and I know people have seen a number of different presentations from us over time. And just to sort of recap on the things that we've been doing, the initial piece of work started very much with, okay, well, we have the 5230 specification, but what can we define as a set of capabilities that effectively are the skills, the roles, the processes, the information, the data, the tooling, systems and support, these being, tangible capabilities. Well, what are those capabilities? And can we agree a sort of a defined set of capabilities which capture the intent and the requirements of the 5230 specification? And that work has been, completed and has been looked at, in a number of different test cases, and working with a range of clients, and it's something that people have talked about, and we seem to be fairly happy with those definitions. And we also looked at some definitions of well, what does a development level mean? So if we're saying, well, we've got a basic capability or we've got an advanced capability, can we define some standards for how we move through, let's say, different levels of capability development? And these approaches have been tested, and they've also been shared and discussed. We've had much contribution from a wide group of people, both from other consultancies like Deloitte, and also from other partner members of OpenChain who have been sharing their experience, which has all been very valuable. And that consultation and discussion is something we're very keen to continue. So today's announcement is very much along the lines of, well, there's been some good work, and there's a substantial work to share with you, but we're very keen to continue to hear from people as we develop things that people think to be useful from an education perspective. So here is the mapping of requirements and capabilities, which focus very much on sort of process headings, which I think are easy to recognize and hopefully are implicitly make sense in relation to the ISO 5230 requirements. So just to give you an explanation of what you're looking at, the orange headed boxes with the numbers, say 3.1.3 policy, that's a direct link to a section in 5230. And then in the white boxes underneath each of those are effectively processes and activities that are either directly explicit in 5230 or very clearly implicit in the definition of the ISO specification. And those capabilities have been organized into 3 layers. And the 3 layers, again, help us take sort of categorize and take a view across the different ways in which capabilities might need to be developed. And the bottom layer is all about the core processes that I think people will be very familiar with in relation to the delivery of open source compliance, because they have those core elements of understanding license obligations, delivering against license compliance policy, having a bill of materials, and also being able to produce compliance artifacts. But we all know that those core activities don't happen without decent oversight and strategy, which is what the top layer is about, and they won't happen without enablement and some degree of active management inside an organization, which is where the activities in the middle layer come together. So I won't read through all of those different boxes, but I just wanted to sort of highlight that relationship between the 3 layers. And again, it can be very much a case of, and we've seen this in different organizations, people may well have challenges in one particular area or in adoption, and it may well be because the middle layer or the top layer isn't quite in the right place. And so it can be very useful to, very useful to think about those 3 different focuses of the layers within the organization as to how those capabilities have been put in place. I mentioned over earlier, which is the capability development, and forgive me, this is an older slide. We've dropped the word maturity model, so we're sticking just to the definition of a capability model, because it's about, I think it has connotations with other aspects of capability maturity models, which aren't necessarily the way in which we're intending this one to be used. So the capability model has 5 levels of development within it, and in particular, this is something that we found has provoked some interesting discussion in terms of how the definitions then map onto capabilities. But just taking them through, if you have something that's sort of very initial or ad hoc, that would be something at level 1, and going through something which is repeatable but may not be well structured or defined, and level 3 where something is actually defined and the emphasis we're placing on defined is implemented, and the sort of the expectation is that open chain compliance, an organization that's achieved open chain compliance and has been running for a good 6 months or something, would be at that level, that level 3 across the board to have achieved compliance. And then you get into levels 4 and 5. So if something is being actively managed, that in a way requires that the capability has a set of objectives and also some sort of performance indications, maybe some OKRs, perhaps even associated with that particular activity or capability. And if that is in place and is being actively monitored on top of just being run and implemented, then that would make it level 4. And then if there has been some learning and some insight gleaned from actively managing something, so that you begin to change and optimize that capability over time, then that would be where a level 5 development signification, where level 5 development would be signified in the capability model. And that's something that we've been discussing and debating. Has been quite interesting conversation going through the commentary in the model that we've been looking at. So with that said, here's the link of the latest model. It's the what we decided to do was to effectively share what we're sort of calling a 10,000 meter view, which is which is a baseline which is useful and coherent and complete, but doesn't go into another level of granularity inside capabilities to sort of drill down even further into perhaps 4 different distinct categories of process, people, information, and tooling, but stays at a sort of a level above that and explains the kind of capabilities that need to be in place, and they could be a blend of those 4 different types of capability, so that the capability model is relatively easy to use and is quick, relatively quick, for someone to sort of do a quick test against their capabilities and actually generate some good discussion and questions on the way. So that's where we've decided to set a sort of a level of granularity of the capability model, and that's what we're calling the 10,000 meter view version. And Andrew, I think, is going to talk us through that next, to give you a sense of what's been done and where we're going with this work. And I'll come back and explain a bit more about next steps in a minute. So Andrew, over to you. Shall I stop sharing?
Yeah, lovely. That's excellent.
Sharing.
Splendid. Thank you very much, Stephen. So right, I shall now attempt to share. Excellent. So I think one of the driving forces behind this, so as Stephen mentioned, this is something that we've been working on for some time now, and for client engagements, we've been using the more granular system that includes the 4 lenses that he talked about as well. And one of the issues that we had coming back from clients is that they really needed to have some concrete examples. It was very, very abstract, and it's fine for us to work with. But for them, it would have been much easier, both from an implementation and but also from an educative point of view, to be able to come up with some concrete examples for what it would look like if this particular capability was at that particular level. So that's really what we've been trying to do here. And the important thing to realize is that there is a bit of a tension between the open chain specification, ISO 5230, which is very much designed to be non-prescriptive. So there's any number of ways in which any of the particular requirements can be fulfilled, and there's always a danger that if we come up with concrete examples, then people will say, well, in order to do this, then you have to follow this particular concrete example. So I need to say this at the outset, that's absolutely not the case at all. This is just a set of examples. But having said that, there is a high probability that if you are going to get up, especially with a largish organization, you're going to sort of get up to levels 4 and 5. In order to have the information that you need for active management and improvement, then you're going to be needing to have performance indicators and other statistical data, and it's going to be very difficult to obtain that statistical data unless you have tooling that generates that automatically. So just when I go through this, then this is something that we need to bear in mind. So what we're looking at here is the 5230 specification, and if you've looked at the open chain template open source policy, then you'll see that this looks very similar in many ways, because basically what I've done here is column A contains all of the relevant paragraph numbers, column B contains the actual text of 5230 itself. So if you cut and paste this into a text document, you will end up with the specification. And then column C categorizes each of these, each of the paragraphs. So H stands for heading. If you click on here, then you can see that I've sort of categorized them each with a little tag. So H is for the headings, RQ is for the requirements, RT is for the rationale, VAM is for the verification materials, and TX is supporting policy text. So VM, we're concentrating on the verification materials here, because these are the material that you need to generate in an organization to demonstrate that you are compliant with ISO 5230. So what we've basically done is we've expanded that and said, okay, if you look at those materials, then what does that reveal about your capability against that particular criterion? And so here you will see that the criteria that Stephen mentioned earlier, so initial, repeatable, defined and implemented, managed, and optimizing. And then for each level, then there is an example of what an organization might look like to reach that level. So there's a requirement to have a documented open source policy. So an initial requirement might be that no regulations considering open source compliance management are in place, but there may exist an ad hoc list of management memos, emails, and meeting minutes. Then when we get up to the repeatable level, then we're talking about them being potentially written down, but they're not coordinated, not implemented in an official policy document, and so on. Then we move over to the defined and implemented level, at which point there is a policy which is defined and implemented in corporate governance. Then we move over to managed. And that involves monitoring, management, and review. And then the optimizing, the top level, is where there's continuous review and adaptation in the overall business policy. So I'm not going to go through each one of these individual sections, requirements, but you'll get the idea as to how this is intended to operate. Now, the important thing to realize is that this is a spectrum. And one of the things that we've identified is that, I mean, I sort of mentally consider that there's an MM0, which is you've done nothing at all. Whether it's helpful to actually have a formal MM0 is another question, but it's basically going to say nothing in each one of those. Nothing has been done in each one of these boxes. We didn't see the point in writing that down. But on the other hand, it became clear that if you see it can be quite a large leap between initial and repeatable, and rather than seeing it as a leap, we're seeing it more as a continuum. And in particular, this is if you look at columns MM2 and MM3, then if you go from repeatable to defined and implemented, it is actually useful to have an additional column 2.5, which talks about where your organization has a defined process for that particular capability, but you're some way towards implementation. And the reason that this is hidden is that it's just really to sort of simplify it, but if you sort of bear in mind, and there could theoretically, be sort of interim steps between each of those, each of these levels for each of the capabilities, but we don't want to overcomplicate things at the moment. So that's really just sort of something to bear in mind. So the idea is that an organization can have a look at this, and then they can identify their own position against the examples that we're giving in each of these boxes. And the intention then is that they will be essentially be able to score themselves, or alternatively, it can be used if an external consultant comes in, can use this as an example and as a way of maintaining each of the scores there. So the stage that we're at the moment is that we have wording for every level from MM1 to 3, 4, 5 for each of these capabilities. MM 2.5 is not fully defined yet, but as I say, that's just really an example to show that there can be intermediate steps in here. So I'll just go back to hiding that again. There's a lot of work has been carried out. So thanks again to Sasha and David and Deloitte. Thanks also to Martin as well. The area has also been involved in this. So we now do have a complete set of all of the capabilities at all of the levels, which is fantastic achievement. So thank you very much, everyone. And we're continuing to iterate this, and then we have a potential launch timetable, which Stephen will explain shortly. So I think that probably covers everything that we need to talk about here. We've shared the link with this, so feel free to leap in and add any comments that you have. We're regularly reviewing and iterating this, and I think we're pretty close to a document that we feel is very comfortable that we're able to use. We're about to launch this for sort of wider public consultation outside the scope of just the education work group. So I will stop sharing, and Stephen, over to you. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Let me go back here. So yeah, as Andrew said, we are looking at launching this now. This work using the sort of the following timeline. So I think today we can pretty much say this is a good version 0.9 with, as you can see in the pack, a lot of feedback and commentary. So there is some further editing to be done based on that commentary, but we're very keen to get any other contributors welcome. The link is there and shared, and the style is just add comments straight into the sheet. We will be completing this this work in the run up to Tokyo for Open Compliance Summit on the 30th, 31st, and that will be there'll be some presentations similar to this, where we hope to be able to share the work with people and launch. And I think between November and January, I think we're very keen to work with any other early adopters. So people, in particular, really people who want to explore, a use case that's most relevant to them. For example, if someone thinks, well, we're close to being at sort of like level 2.5, can we have a run around 2.5? It'd be nice to see if we can share that, or an organization that really wants to be testing some capabilities of where they need to get to be at the full level 5 optimizing, or any of the other use cases we were talking about earlier. And so, to be doing that between November and January, and that then could be work that we could share with others. So if there's a particular experience that people have had, for example, in considering the adoption of AI governance, if we could work as an education work group, work alongside an organization, then we could share that with others as we launch at FOSDEM on the 1st of February, or even at FOSS Backstage on the 10th of March. And I think we'll be keen to find another event in East Asia as well, in that kind of timeline to share this work, because really the whole point of the model is not to have something which sits on the shelf, but is something that is used and tested and deployed, and people can then share their experience of handling particular questions using this model as a benchmark, as a frame, because that will be the way in which to really rapidly share understanding and the way in which capabilities have been addressed. So I think that really wraps it up for today in terms of the capability model. We are of course open to questions, and we'll take questions here, or of course also you can email Andrew as the chair of the education work group if you're keen to understand more.
Fantastic. Excellent, thank you, Stephen. No, that's brilliant. So Stephen says, please do get in touch. So the forums available are, you can email us directly. You can also participate in the education workgroup mailing list, is probably a good place to deal with this. You can leap straight into the document and add comments where appropriate as well. But we're getting a lot of practical feedback at the moment, so thanks again to everyone that has been involved in this. And I say the roadmap also includes basically using the expanding the capability model to cover other areas, so including security and vulnerability assessment, potentially including AI and so on and so forth. So we can see a lot of power in this as well. So if anyone's got any questions right now, feel free to unmute and talk. Otherwise, I've mentioned the other means by which you can get in touch with us, and we're very happy to take any questions and comments, etc. Okay, I think that probably covers it. So thank you very much indeed for your attendance, and thanks again to all the participants and the people who've given us sort of excellent assistance with work on this so far. And
Jimmy and Martin.
Jimmy and Martin, those are they questions or claps? Either of which are very accepted. Okay, that's brilliant. Right. Okay. Well, thanks, guys. Thanks, everyone. And enjoy the rest of your day. And please do get in touch. Thank you very much indeed.
Thanks both. Bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Great work.